Hello friends, welcome back to a brand new pair of glasses that we're trying on today. My first question, and you can see it written above my head here, what is ideology? What does that mean to you? What was the first thing that popped in your head when I said ideology? You probably thought, I'm willing to bet, I'm reading your mind right now, you may have thought belief system, you may have thought perspective, philosophy, worldview. All of these would be correct. An ideology is a belief system that seeks to explain why things are the way things are. These are the sets of codes and rules and beliefs that we believe in and support at this moment. Ideologies support all the terms and assumptions and all the frameworks that we use to try and explain and understand our culture all around us. They're the things that make us do things and believe in things. For example, I'm going to put on the board behind me 3 different political ideologies just so we can see the difference between them and how these work. So in these 3 systems here, we can see different ways that different types of government are clearly defined. And this is the difference between them. Capitalism is divided power. Some people have it, some people don't. America is very proud of its sort of capitalistic society, and we tend to hold on to capitalism as the most fairest system that there is. Beneath that is socialism, and this is the idea of shared power. Everyone puts a little bit in, everyone gets a little bit out. In socialism, no one person is really too far better off than anybody else. And down on the bottom is communism, and that's one power. That's when one person wields tremendous power over a whole lot of other people. And you can imagine how much goes wrong there when you have one person exploiting and manipulating everything else over everybody else. Well, how do the rulers of these 3 different systems get their ideas across to the people so that the people not only buy into them, that not only do they practice the belief, but they believe in it, they support it? Well, they use something called propaganda. And we think of that as an old-timey thing. We think of, Hitler's Nazi Germany, where he used propaganda to sway the minds of people to support him and his horrendous agenda. But propaganda still happens all the time, and we're going to talk about that a little more today. We're constantly being just pumped with ideas and influences, different things that different people want to make us think in different ways. Well, why should we care about Marxism today when it's supposed to have died out back in 1989 when the Berlin Wall fell down? That's what many Americans believe today, but in fact, right now in the world, 1 in 5 people live in communist-led countries. You have countries like the People's Republic of China, or Vietnam, or Cuba, or North Korea, that are still under communist leadership. Now, contemporary Marxist criticism, this is what we're going to be using as we read Jaws, has very little to do with the old-timey communism or even how modern communism functions. In fact, a modern communist would probably not see eye to eye with a modern practitioner of Marxism, and a modern Marxist really doesn't like what communism has done to Marxist ideas. They think that communism took what at its heart had some pretty good ideas that were meant to help everyone, and then twisted them and manipulated them to give one person power over everybody else. Before we get too far into this, I want to make it very clear, I'm talking directly to you. I want to assure you, I'm not trying to force political beliefs on you. I'm not trying to tell you you have to believe in a certain way or not. In fact, the way we use Marxism in an English class has very little to do with politics. The two have come completely separate. So we use it as a way to interpret art. So I don't want you to think that I am some radical professor who's trying to force beliefs on you. I just want you to understand the history of where this came from and how it changed to a really practical tool that we use to understand characters and plot and the ideas that some stories get across. If you remember back in the early part of the semester when we talked about Aristotle and Plato and the poets, they were very idealistic. That means their ideas were all about truth and beauty and love and art. You know, these very abstract, warm and fuzzy things. But then Karl Marx came along and said, no, as human beings, we need a little bit more than that in order to survive. We need things like food and shelter and commerce. We need money to be able to sustain ourselves, to be able just to live, to survive. So Marx came along with a more materialistic perspective and said we need a lot more to survive. We have physical needs that need fulfilling, not just artistic needs. In fact, a lot of people mistakenly think Karl Marx was some radical activist guy who was stirring up communist feelings, and that's not who he was. He was a historian, and he liked to study history and find patterns, and he observed that a really important pattern developed, and that was the division between the very wealthy class and a working class, how they benefit each other and also how they exploit each other. So he didn't come up with a political party of his own. He came up with a very specific set of ideas that a political party later came along and adopted as their own. And Marx said that as people came together in order to produce basic needs for survival, like food and shelter and clothing, they took tasks and they divided these chores up amongst each other in order to get things done. And this led to competition, you know, some trying to make more than others, some trying to make things better than others, and this led to ultimately a division in classes between workers. So people began trading their goods. I made this and you can have it as long as you give me that. You know, whatever the trade was. It could be for money, it could be bartering for other goods. In any case, that's when capitalism was born. And labor was divided into two camps that look something like this. So Marx said that labor was divided into two camps that are often sort of at odds with each other. On one side you have that fun word, the bourgeoisie, which were the wealthy bosses. These are the men who owned the factories, who kept the vast majority of the money that their inventions were bringing in. And on the other side you have the proletariat. These are the worker bees. These are the folks who work in the factories in order to make the objects that are making the bourgeoisie very, very rich people. What it boils down to is you have a small number of rich owners and a very large number of workers who labored for long hours and very low wages to make money for that small number who kept the wealth mostly for themselves. This is where we have the division of, you know, the 1% who were very wealthy versus the 99% of the rest of us who kind of do all the hard work. You've probably heard that old saying, you have to spend money to make money. Well, at the heart of capitalism is the word capital. And capital refers to the money that we use to buy something in order to turn around and fix it up and sell it for more money so that we can make a profit. The difference between is the money that we get to keep and stick in our pockets here. And people do this all the time. Let's say, for example, I buy an antique watch for $100 from a thrift shop or an antique store. And I fix it up and I get it running like new and I polish it up and now it becomes a valuable antique. So I turn around and I sell this watch now for $1,000. Well, I just made $900 profit. That's money that I get to keep because I did the work. And I'm going to take some of that profit. I'm going to take some of that $900 and I'm going to buy some more antique watches, fix them up, get them up and running, and turn around and sell them for ridiculous amounts of money. And if I do this enough times, I can start a business where I can hire people to do the work for me. So I've just gone from the proletariat up to the bourgeoisie. So there's movement in the capitalist system, for us to get ahead if we want to. And people do this all the time. They use capital to invest all the time. You see it in huge corporations where people invest in the form of stock, and they trade stock and money. On a smaller scale, people do this with fashion. They do this with cars. People fix up cars and turn around and sell them for more money. People do this with houses. They flip houses. There's an entire channel on cable, I think it's HGTV, I love that, where they fix up houses and turn around and sell them for ridiculous amounts of money. It's the American way. It's how we get business done. And in America, we like to believe in capitalism. We cling to it. It's really important to us because in a way, doesn't it give us hope? It suggests that if we work hard enough and smart enough and long enough, that we can achieve great things for ourselves and for our families, that we're not stuck where we are, that with just a little elbow grease, a little hard work, we can start moving up that social ladder. We can start doing better for ourselves. And isn't that the appeal to people from all over the world? Isn't that why people come to America? Because they believe in this dream that they can achieve too, as long as they come here to America to do it. We're sort of the beacon of the world. We send out this message of hope all the time. But the thing is, with ideology, we have to be very careful, because sometimes it looks wonderful on its surface, but if you dig a little deeper, there are problems with it. And that's why when I listed those 3 words on the board earlier, I listed ism at the end of them, because these are belief systems. They're ideologies. That means we've adopted it, and someone out there is making sure that we believe in it and that we support it and that you and I keep buying into it. Now, at the heart of Marxism, when we use it as a literary criticism, when we slide on these glasses and take a look at a story or the world around us through these lenses, it focuses really on these 4 main ideas. And these are the ideas of economy, so that's the economic system, the bigger system. Power, who has it and who wants it. And power can come in many forms. It can be political power. It can be physical power like strength. It can be sexual power. You've probably seen movies or read books where characters use their sexuality in order to manipulate people and take advantage of other people. We have issues of social class. You want to look and see how does that impact characters or the way that they're thinking or believing or behaving. And finally, survival. And survival can come in different forms too. Are we talking about someone's political survival? Their financial survival? Are they just one paycheck away from losing it all and becoming a totally different person? Are we talking about even physical survival? Is this a matter of life and death? Well, Marx said because we are materialistic people, and I know that sounds like a negative thing, but he's just saying it's part of survival, right? He says these 4 elements are very, very important, and we ascribe value. That means we attach value to everything around us. This makes sense because back during the feudalism period, the knights and queens and the kingdoms and all this, people took a lot of pride in the goods that they manufactured. A clothing maker or a horseshoe maker, whatever the case may be. They saw their creations from the beginning to the very end. They were there to create the things with their own 2 hands, and then they took them to the marketplace, where they sold them for money or to exchange other goods. And so people were very proud of their handiwork because they saw it from the creation to satisfaction with customers. You and I now, we don't really get to see the benefits of our hard work. If you work in a factory or some kind of job like that, if you think about someone who makes, for example, spark plugs, they work in a spark plug factory. And that's what they do all day, and those spark plugs end up being placed into other cars. So the people in the factory don't even see the cars that their spark plugs go into. Some of the workers might not even be able to afford the cars that they made with their own 2 hands, the spark plugs that go into those cars. We don't make our own Nike shoes, right? We don't harvest our own pizza crop. We don't assemble our own cell phones. We depend on labor. We depend on other people to do the hard work for us, so that when we walk into that store or we are about to leave that restaurant, we just slide our little debit cards into the little machine and we pay for the hard work that someone else has done for us. When we buy something we want, something that appeals to us, we automatically assign it something called sign exchange value. And all that means is when we buy something, we give it importance. It gives us status, like buying a Rolex watch, or applying to Harvard University, or driving a Mercedes-Benz. It's about the label and how that makes us feel. You might be wearing really fancy, expensive shoes right now. You may have spent quite a bit of money on your sneakers that you're wearing. And I guarantee you, your shoes don't work any better than my cheap shoes that I bought at Payless that I don't even think have a brand. I don't think they're called anything. I think they're just called shoe. So because you have the sign exchange value of a very expensive, fancy shoe, strangers will look at you and be like, look at that guy. He's fancy. He's got money to be spending on shoes. But then people will look at my shoe. Let me take my shoe off. People will look at my sad little, look at these. That's sad. That's sad. People will look at my sad little shoe and they're going to look at him and be like, oh shit, he's a teacher. Huh? So that value then becomes a part of your ideology, your personal ideology. Let me ask you something else about your values. Why are you here? Why are you in college? You could be anywhere else. You could be, if you don't have a job, you could be working a full-time job right now. You know, you come to class, you watch these videos that I torture you with, and meanwhile, maybe your friends are sleeping in, or your friends are going out and having fun, or they're working more hours at a job so they have a bigger paycheck than you, and that would be kind of nice to have more money in your account. But instead, you're choosing to pay with your time and your money to take this English class with me, of all people. Why are you here? Why are you doing it? I would think if we were in a classroom together, you would be shouting out things like, to advance my career, right? To specialize in something, to make more money. I want to advance my career so I can make more money and buy a house and have all the really nice flashy things that I want for working really hard to get. You might be saying, I am also here to grow intellectually. I just want to be a smarter person. I want to have that edge over other people. Some of you might be here because you need a creative outlet. You're creative and you want to do something with that. Or you like being here because of the different cultures. Maybe you've made some new friends. Maybe you've made friends and talked to people you wouldn't normally connect with, and that's a great experience too. Another really important reason you might have come to college was to discover who you are. For a lot of you, this is your first big taste of freedom, of independence. You're a grown-up now, and you get to live life as a grown-up. And for some of you, coming to college means you kind of got to erase the slate, right? You got to leave all that old, petty, silly high school shit behind. And now you're in college where you get to be your own person and form your own identity and be the person you want to be. All of these things are terrific reasons to come to college. But Marxism says, you're wrong. We have it all wrong. Karl Marx says that we are all fooling ourselves. All of you guys as students, all of us professors, we're fooling ourselves. The real reason we're here, in much less inspiring terms, is simply to reproduce the labor economic system. That's why we're here. Just to help the system keep going. Nobody gets excited to hear that. But the truth is, for many of us, when you're done with college, you're going to go to work and you're going to have a boss. And the best you can probably achieve in your life is maybe middle management position. Maybe you'll be a manager and manage a team beneath you, but you're going to still have people above you to answer to. In fact, you're just going to be a replaceable part of this giant machine. If you don't do your job well, they fire you, they bring in someone else, and the system keeps rolling along just fine without you. You probably won't change very much, at least not on a large scale. You might make tiny adjustments here and there, but ultimately any little beneficial thing you do, any good thing you do, is really just going to help keep the labor economic system moving. Imagine if a college tried to sell itself to you that way. Come to our campus and get a degree in the field of your dreams so that you can go out and reproduce the labor economic system. Students would turn and run and find another place to go that sounds warm and fuzzier, like just come achieve your dreams, right? But according to Karl Marx and Marxism, that's the fate that waits for all of us, and there's nothing we can really do about that. We're all just going to live a life of tiny adjustments and hard work and, at best, middle management dreams. That's it for us. And you might think, well, I'm going to avoid that trap, and I'm going to become a teacher where I can inspire positive change. I'm going to make a difference in the lives of people. But aren't I just a part of the machine too? Everything I'm doing now to prepare you to be a better writer if I can, or a more observant person of the world around you. Isn't my job still just to prepare you to send you out into the world to help reproduce the labor economic system? Isn't that my function? And let's say I rebel against that. Let's say I'm not going to listen to Mount Sack's mission statements, and I'm going to run against the rules here. I'm going to be my own guy. I'm not going to do what the campus tells me to do. You know what's going to happen to me. I'm a part-time teacher. They just take my key away and fire me and replace me with another person who's waiting to get in to campus to be a professor. If they don't want me, they cut me out. So Marxist thought is very, very depressing. It's about those in power keeping their power and staying in power while the rest of us just accept it. And why do we? Because we pretty much do. Why don't we revolt or fight back or rebel against the system? Why don't we take major stabs into it to try and change it? Why do we accept it for the most part? Well, the state with a capital S, that's a word that's used to describe any governing power, the state. It sounds very sinister. It sounds very malevolent, right? It sounds like this evil thing. The state has a very important job to do. It must create and enforce the rules that we have to follow. But not only that, the state has to convince us, the people, that it's in our best interest to follow those rules and believe in them and support them. And they have two ways of doing this. So the state has two primary mechanisms for getting people to follow in line and behave correctly. And these are ISAs and RSAs. ISAs, these are ideological state apparatuses. These are the non-physical psychological forces that a government has to make you believe in the rules it wants you to follow. So this is how they get into your head. And the way they do that is by sending messages where people are often together. Many of you probably, like me, went to public school. In fact, 98% of American students go to public school. And because public school is overseen by the government, they have ways of ensuring that schools deliver certain messages to all school children. I wonder how many of you, like me, had to stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance when you were a student in elementary school, or even in middle and high school as well. You maybe had to stand next to your desk with your hand over your heart and recite the words while facing the flag. This is one of the ways that the state enacts and embodies the values it wants you to have. It's a ritual that students are forced to do in order to train you to be loyal and patriotic. We also receive messages from our church, right? Our church tells us how to behave. what our morals and values should be. Now, we all have different belief systems, we all have different religions, and so each one is training us in its own unique way, basically how to be a good citizen. And then, of course, probably the most dominant method of all is the media. This is news, this is commercials, this is movies, TV shows, the music we listen to, advertisements, all of these things that are constantly getting into our heads and convincing us of what we need and what we want and how we should be. Now, if we don't behave, if we don't fall in line with the ideological state apparatuses, then the state has at its disposal repressive state apparatuses. And if that sounds a little more dangerous, that's because it is. These are the physical ways that the state can force you to do what it wants you to do. And this comes in the form of courts, right? Courts make the rules and they make sure that we follow them. If we break the rule, then we have to pay a fine. If we break more serious rules, then the police or the military come out to make sure that we are following the rules. And if we still don't follow along, then we're sent to prison. We have our freedom taken away from us. So the state has ways of making sure that, the bad apples among us follow in line. When we decide to believe in a certain ideology, then we adopt the rules of it and we begin to enact that ideology. We live it, right? We follow it. And Marxists call this idea interpolation. Another way to think of that is hailing, sort of like hailing a taxi cab, right? So an ideology will call to you, it'll hail to you, and it's hoping that you, like a taxi, will pull over and be like, get in! Come and join me. An ideology depends on you feeling seen by it. So if an ideology waves to you and you're like, who, me? And you decide to follow it, then you become a subject of that ideology. Sort of like a king and queen has subjects who follow them, you become a subject of that set of ideas. You believe in them, you practice them, you live them, they become a part of you. We see this all the time, especially in advertising. When a commercial says, hey, do you want abs of steel? Do you want a beach body? Of course you do. And if you think, yes, I do want that, then you have accepted the ideology. It's pulled you into it. So then you pick up your phone and you order that thing off a TV, the exercise equipment or whatever, the diet food that gives you that beach body, because they just sold you on that. They hooked you in and now you believe it. You've probably seen those stupid commercials for, products you can buy on TV where people, like, they have a pot and they're just trying to make sauce, but they make a huge mess of it and they're like, oh no, how can I stop that from happening? And then the commercial says, you need our special pot that you will never drop again and you will never spill anything. Listen, I don't know why it is, but it's always white people in those commercials, and I'm a white people. Why can't my people walk through a kitchen without destroying it? Why are we always dropping our pots and pans and spilling sauce, and we just can't open lids and we can't reach the shelves, so we just give up and we're sad? Whatever the case may be, I am such a victim for these commercials, and I constantly fall for the ideology, always. Because my ideology is I want a safe, clean home for my children. I want my home to run efficiently and smoothly. And so those commercials that are constantly selling you things about making your life easier, buy the magic mop. Ooh, okay. If you go downstairs right now to my laundry room, I have an entire shelf in my laundry room that is all the shit I bought from TV, because when I saw the commercial, I answered the ideology. I said, yes, I need that. That speaks to me. I'm with you. And I can tell you I've used everything down there maybe one time and discovered what junk they really are. They don't work. Nothing ever really works the way the commercial tells you it will. During primetime TV, so if you turn on TV in the evenings, you're going to see a lot of commercials for restaurants. You see a lot of Chili's, Jack in the Box, Olive Garden, always in the evening, but not really during the day. Why do you suppose that is? Well, Obviously, those commercials are hailing to you. They're going to speak to you because what they're saying is, it's the end of the day, you're tired, you were just at school, or you just came home from work, you don't want to cook and do all that. Let us do the cooking for you. And if you answer that ideology, if it sounds good to you, you're getting in your car and you're driving down and doing a pickup order from the Olive Garden. Daytime TV works the same way. I watch a ton of TV, so I can tell you I've seen the differences in between TV commercials, and maybe you've seen that too. During the day, you can find lots of TV commercials for things like Windex or Comet or vacuum cleaners, all these cleaning products. Well, they're banking on the idea that the TV is on during the day for homemakers or stay-at-home moms or stay-at-home dads. So they're trying to appeal to you. How do you keep your house clean during the day? Let us help you. We have the best product for you. There are also a lot of commercials for career colleges, for trade schools that promise you come to us and in 2 months you can have a degree and be making $1 million and performing brain surgery on people. And the appeal is come to us, get your education done fast and out of the way, and start making money. You want that, don't you? Of course you do. And if you answer that ideology, then you're picking up the phone or going online and you're getting a brochure to go to that school and get the degree there. And they're hoping to speak to people at home who are unemployed and maybe are looking for a new chapter in their life. Or they're looking for people who feel stuck in their jobs and want something better, who want something different. Or they're speaking to just lazy people laying on the couch who just need some new direction in life. Whatever the case might be, whatever the situation is, we are always subjects of ideology. Always. We are constantly practicing the rituals of ideological recognition, right? All the time. We're doing it right now, you and I, and we've been doing it since day one. When we were in a classroom, you would come in and you would sit down, you would take your seat, I would go up to the front of the room, and we would practice our ritual of student and teacher. Even now, even doing it this way, you're watching these videos because they're part of the materials for the class, you have to do it. You're listening to me go on and on. This is part of our practice. I'm sharing information, you're receiving information. That's how it works. And even if you say, you know what, I'm not a part of any ideology, I reject all ideologies. Sorry, you're still in one. That just means you joined an ideology that rejects all the other ones. You can't get out of it. We're constantly in it. It's a rabbit hole that you just keep falling down deeper and deeper and deeper. And this is why Marxism, the idea, can be so depressing. Now remember, it's just a theory. It doesn't mean don't quit college because it's not leading to anything. Don't do that. These are just ideas. This is one way of seeing the world. So all of this talk about Marxism and labor and power, what does that mean for us sitting here in an English class? You know, how do we take those ideas and apply it to a movie or to a book? We're about to dive into the water here with Jaws. And I'm going to ask you to look at the story through this very specific lens. And I think a lot of surprising things will come bubbling up to the surface here. So I'm going to give you some 4 questions that you can ask yourself while you're reading the novel that I think will help guide you through the story and help you form some ideas that you might want to write about for this particular essay. Right, so as you read, obviously I want you to keep those 4 pieces up in the corner in your mind. It's all about economy, power, social class, and survival. That's everything in a nutshell. Now the 4 questions in blue are more specific ways that you can expand on those 4 main ideas. So number 1, how does the story reinforce or challenge economic ideologies? That's kind of the big broad umbrella statement about the book. 2, 3, and 4 I put stars next to because they're going to help you get a little more specific with details. So number 2, how are characters influenced by economic factors? So in other words, how does interest with money or finances, how is that impacting their behaviors and the choices that they make? How does money influence their life in a good way or a bad way? Number 3, how are characters influenced by the possession of or the need for power? Like I said before, some characters will have power, some characters want or need power. So where do you see power in this story? And number 4, how do these elements all together impact survival? Now obviously this is a story about a killer shark and human beings, so you have the element of human survival, of physical survival. But the story takes place in a summer resort town, and their economic survival is dependent on how much money they make over the summer. So you're going to see survival appear in the story in all kinds of different ways. All right, in the next few videos that are going to take us through the next few weeks here, I'm going to give you some background on the creation of the novel Jaws. That might help you shape some of your argument, because a lot of what was happening in life in the 70s in America has some very Marxist ideas to it that you might be able to apply to the story. So I'll give you some background on why that might be. I'm going to post a couple of videos, obviously, some of our book talks where we're going to go over the details of the story, get to know our characters and our settings, and I will address some questions about the essay as well. If you've taken a look at the instructions so far, you may have noticed that there are 3 options. So you have 3 different choices that you can take a look at. If one of those questions jumps out to you, if one of those seems more interesting to you, then use that question to guide your reading of the novel. So as you're reading, look for clues and evidence, the little Easter eggs that will help you with that specific question. If you need to get to the end of the book, just sort of absorb the story first before you decide which option you want to go with. That's fine if that's how you work. But because I don't have a sample paper for this one, and I'm going to treat this like a final, so I want you to build your essay from the ground up. I want you to show me what you can do with the tips and strategies and little things I've given you. I want to see what you do. And so in order to make that maybe a little bit easier, maybe take some pressure off, I wanted to give you options. So you have more choices there and I hope one of them will jump out to you. I hope you like this. I hope you will like the novel. This is probably my favorite. I am obsessed with all things Jaws. In a future video, I'll kind of show you around my office and point out a couple of Jaws things that I've got that I absolutely love. I would rush into my burning house to save these things, and then I'd go back and get my kids. So have a wonderful, wonderful week ahead. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I will see you soon. All right, bye, 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 bye.